Folks, bipartisanship isn't broken in the United States of America because both sides are bludgeoning it. That's not what's happening. You have actually Democrats and reasonable Republicans negotiating together to try to achieve things in this country. But then you have MAGA Republicans taking direction from Donald Trump to try to break things, to keep things bad so that Donald Trump can whine about it when he campaigns and then say only he can fix it. Take a look at the immigration bill that's part of the Senate National Security Supplemental that was introduced on Sunday. The MAGA Republicans said they were going to try to destroy a bipartisan immigration bill, which is the toughest immigration bill in generations, and that's what MAGA Republicans are trying to do. So on Sunday evening, this bipartisan bill, the text of it was released by the Senate. You had Democrats and Republicans negotiate this, and it reflected some compromises, but it is a very, very tough bill. I want to show you this, though, because you had MAGA Mike Johnson on Fox and doing his rounds throughout the media, and he was saying that he was left out of these discussions, that he was not invited to have any of these discussions with senators, which is odd because you would think the Speaker of the House would be involved in that. And just so we can have a very basic civics discussion right here, for a bill to become a law, it has to pass in the Senate, and it has to pass in the House, and then it has to be signed by the president. It has to go through all of those steps. So if the House, controlled by MAGA Mike Johnson, Donald Trump's coffee boy, tries to kill this bill, the fact that the Senate wants it, the fact that President Biden wants it, you won't be able to get it into law if MAGA Mike Johnson and the MAGA-donians in the House of Representatives are killing this bill. Here was Maria Bartiromo talking to Mike Johnson and saying, it's a little odd that you weren't involved in these negotiations, and watch MAGA Mike Johnson kind of just goes with it, and then he deflects and then blames. Here, play this clip.
Anybody going to be held accountable for not sharing information with you, the leader of the House of Representatives? I mean, with all due respect, it's a little strange to me that you have not been involved in these talks, and you say you have not seen any text on this border deal, which is the crux of our issues in America right now.
It's the biggest crisis that we face. I've been in 15 states since I've been the Speaker of the House for the last 100 days. Everywhere I go, whether it's out west, Midwest, East Coast, Long Island, Deep South, everybody says the same thing. We can't continue this. This is not a sustainable thing.
Well, now what we are learning from a very right-wing conservative senator from Oklahoma, James Lankford, who was involved in the negotiation of the bipartisan immigration bill as part of the Senate's National Security Supplemental, that MAGA Mike Johnson actually insisted that he not be involved in the discussions. He took himself out at Donald Trump's request and said the House is not going to be involved in this, that the MAGAs who control the House of Representatives, they're not going to be involved in any discussion. So MAGA Mike didn't even want to learn about it. He took himself out of the discussions because their goal, them being MAGA, is to kill Bill, kill the bill. Here's what it was reported by CNN from Manu Raju, who wrote, GOP Senator James Lankford told me that Speaker Johnson, MAGA Mike, was invited to participate in the Senate talks, but ultimately declined because he said the House already approved its own border security bill. Johnson has been increasingly critical of these Senate talks and has suggested that the House members were not allowed to take part in the talks. But Senator Lankford told me that Johnson was asked early on whether you want to be engaged in this. Johnson's response, according to Lankford, quote, he said the House has already spoken, referring to the House Republican bill H.R. 2, which Senate Democrats call a non-starter. Johnson has been loosely briefed on the Senate talks since then. according to Lankford. And as I mentioned, on Sunday night, the Senate deal was released. It's 370 pages. The bill involves appropriations of $118 billion. It's a bipartisan border deal. And let me just share with you how a conservative senator, Republican from Oklahoma, characterizes the aspect of the Senate supplemental that deals with the border. Here's what Republican Senator James Lankford says. Americans are not opposed to legal and orderly immigration, but they are tired of the chaos and abuse at our border. I am happy to announce we have finally finished strong bill text to add to the supplemental funding bill. Though most members of the Senate have already been briefed on the contents of the bill, the final text will be distributed to members of the Senate soon and posted online within a day. The border security bill will put a huge number of new enforcement tools in the hands of a future administration and push the current administration to finally stop the illegal flow. The bill provides funding to build the wall, increase technology at the border, and add more detention beds, more agents, and more deportation flights. The border security bill ends the abuse of parole on our southwest border that has waived in over 1 million people. It dramatically changes our ambiguous asylum laws by conducting fast screenings at a higher standard of evidence, limited appeals, and fast deportation. New bars to asylum eligibility will stop criminal cartels from exploiting our currently weak immigration laws. The bill also has new emergency authorities to shut down the border when the border is overrun, new hiring authorities to quickly increase officers, and new hearing authorities to quickly apply consequences for illegal crossings. It changes our border from catch and release to detain and deport. Our immigration laws have been weak for years. This is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to close our open border and give future administrations the effective tools they need to stop the border chaos and protect our nation. And obviously, you have some language there that is intended to kind of poke at President Biden, but I'm trying to just read to you to show you this was what a conservative Republican who is putting this bill forward. And by the way, President Biden supports this bill. Here's the statement from President Joe Biden on the bipartisan Senate National Security Agreement. President Biden says, for too long, going back decades, the immigration system has been broken. It's time to fix it. That's why over 2 months ago, I instructed members of my administration to work with a bipartisan group of senators to finally seriously address the issue. And that's what they've done, working around the clock through the holidays and over the weekends. Now we've reached an agreement on a bipartisan national security deal that includes the toughest and fairest set of border reforms in decades. I strongly support it. It will make our country safer, make our border more secure, treat people fairly and humanely while preserving legal immigration consistent with our values as a nation. It would give me, as president, a new emergency authority to shut down the border when it becomes overwhelmed. It will make our asylum process fairer and more efficient while protecting the most vulnerable. It will expedite work permits so that those who are here and qualify can get to work more quickly. It will create more opportunities for families to come together through short-term visits as well as increased permanent lawful pathways. It ensures the most vulnerable and accompanied young children have paid legal representation. And it will provide the resources I have repeatedly requested to secure the border by adding Border Patrol agents, immigration judges, asylum officers, and cutting-edge inspection machines to help detect and stop the flow of fentanyl. While this agreement doesn't address everything I would have wanted, these reforms are essential for making our border more orderly, secure, and humane. The bipartisan national security agreement would also address 2 other important priorities, and it talks about foreign priorities. I'll get into more of that in a bit. Because there's more work to be done to get over the finish line, but I want to be clear about something. If you believe, as I do, that we must secure the border now, doing nothing is not an option. Working with my administration, the United States Senate has done the hard work it takes to reach a bipartisan agreement. Now, House Republicans have to decide. Do they want to solve the problem, or do they want to keep playing politics with the border? I've made my decision. I'm ready to solve the problem. I'm ready to secure the border, and so are the American people. I know we have our divisions at home, but we cannot let partisan politics get in the way of our responsibilities as a great nation. I refuse to let that happen. In moments like these, we have to remember who we are. We are the United States of America, and there is nothing beyond our capacity that we can do together. Folks, the reason I'm spending this time going over in detail the language here is because, when we created the MeidasTouch network, it was important to me that we didn't just have, the talking heads and this person's yelling at this person and you don't get the information. I just want to deliver to you the info so, you can decide for yourself here. Let's take a look at some of the high-level terms as well in this Senate supplemental. Let's pull it open right now. It's 108. The overall Senate supplemental is $118.28 billion national security supplemental, $60 billion to support Ukraine, fighting back against Putin's bloody invasion, $14.1 billion in security assistance for Israel, $10 billion in humanitarian assistance to provide food, water, shelter, medical care, and other essential services to civilians in Gaza, $2.4 billion to support operations in the U.S. Central Command to address expenditures related to the conflict in the Red Sea, $4.83 billion to support key regional partners in the Indo-Pacific and deter aggression. This is to help Taiwan. $2.3 billion to continue to support Ukrainians displaced by Putin's war of aggression. The bipartisan border policy, that's what we were just talking about, is included in this. $20.23 billion to address existing operational needs and expand capabilities at our nation's borders, resource the new borders policies, including in the aid package, and help stop the flow of fentanyl and other narcotics. The Fentanyl Eradication and Narcotics Deterrence of Fentanyl Act, $400 million for nonprofit security grant programs to help nonprofits and places of worship make security enhancements right there. So that's all included in this. And look, let me just read you. This is from Fox. Fox reporter whose main beat is the border, who went through this 360-page border deal. And this is what Bill Mulligan from Fox said about the bill. My initial highlights from the border deal: no amnesty legalization of anyone already in the U.S. illegally, funds an increase in ICE detention capacity to approximately 50,000 from the current 34,000, at 7-day rolling average of 5,000 encounters per day or 8,500 encounters in a single day. DHS is required to shut the border down and turn away anyone who crosses. No new asylum claims will be allowed, and anybody crossing will be removed. Would end the whole idea of I made it to U.S. soil, you have to process me. That would be over. Border Patrol would not process the illegal crosser, and they would be removed. No asylum claim permitted unless it's made at a port of entry. This does not mean 5,000 are allowed in before this authority kicks in. Single adults would be detained, families would be released via alternatives to detention, and asylum cases would be fast-tracked to months rather than years under a new rapid expedited expulsion system. Those who fail would be quickly removed from the U.S. Those who initially pass would be released with work authorization and 90-day supervision until final asylum claim is determined. The shutdown authority doesn't drop until crossings decrease significantly in the days following the shutdown. Significantly tougher asylum requirements and a higher credible fear standard, including 3 bars to eligibility, criminal history. Could they have resettled in another country on the way to the U.S.? Could they have resettled somewhere else in their own country? Just saying you're scared to return home will no longer be enough for an initial interview. $1.4 billion in FEMA funding and use of parole release via CBP One app keeps humanitarian parole as it was originally intended. Medical procedures, court cases, etc. 50,000 new visas over 5 years. funding to hire hundreds more ICE deportation officers, Border Patrol agents, USCIS asylum officers. No unaccompanied minors can be removed, and some of these minors will receive attorneys either pro bono or taxpayer funded. DHS will have 90 days to set this new system before it takes effect. There is a provision in the bill that would allow the president to suspend the shutdown authority. It says authorizes the president to suspend the border emergency on an emergency basis for up to 45 days if it is in the interest of the national interest. So those are the powers right there. These are things that were not able to be passed when Trump was in office, but that people were saying that they wanted then. Now there's an opportunity to do this. And the MAGA Republicans are coming out against it. Why? Because Trump told them to break this. You've got Elise Stefanik, surprise, surprise, who now calls January 6th insurrectionists hostages. She's come out and she's called this the Biden-Schumer deal, and we're not supporting the Biden-Schumer deal. And as I just read for you, it's the James Lankford deal. It's the Republican Senate deal where they, on a bipartisan basis, did this with the Democrats. Steve Scalise, MAGA Republican, let's be clear, the Senate border bill will not receive a vote in the House. The MAGA Republicans come out right away against a bill that this is all the stuff they've been asking. This is all the stuff that y'all been asking for, and you have it right now, and you're trying to tank it because you perceive that this will be helpful to you by whining about it. It's a very unfortunate. Here you have MAGA Mike. He was asked right here on Meet the Press if he's taking orders from Donald Trump. Watch what he says here.
Mr. Speaker,
he does have executive authority right now.
Mr. Speaker, you talk about H.R. 2. Again, Senator Lindsey Graham, your Republican colleagues say that stands no chance of passing through the Senate. You have an opportunity to do something right now about the situation at the border, which you've been calling for new legislation on the border since you first took office. But let me ask you about Donald Trump. He said any Republican who votes for this deal should be ashamed of themselves. You've said you speak to him frequently and that you've discussed this deal with him, quote, at length. Is Donald Trump calling the shots here, Mr. Speaker?
Of course not. He's not calling the shots. I am calling the shots for the House. That's our responsibility.
Here's how Fox is pushing it, because they're trying to undermine this. Laura Ingraham saying that this is the uniparty's border sneak. So they call the uniparty, they say. If you're a Democrat, if you're a reasonable Republican, you're the uniparty. You're not MAGA. You're a uniparty by trying to get things done. It's horrific. It's just horrific crap. Play Laura Ingraham right here. Play it.
Oh, and speaking of consequences, there needs to be consequences, political consequences, for Republicans trying to force this bill 9 months before the election. Let the people decide this. Pro-amnesty Republicans, though, when you really think about it, would be really happy if this new border bill hamstrung President Trump from really shutting down the border and really deporting people if he wins in November.
And right here, this is Laura Ingraham again with Stephen Miller and another Fox panelist. They just want to be cruel for cruelty's sake here. And again, trying to undermine this bill for Donald Trump. Play this clip.
Potential border reform bill. If we have a bill that on net significantly decreases illegal immigration, and we sabotage that is inconsistent with what we told our voters we would do. People will make up whatever reasons they want to. There's a number of them, I'm sure. But it would be a pretty unacceptable dereliction of your duty.
Stephen Miller, tough words from Crenshaw. A dereliction of duty. Very indignant he is. What does he get wrong here?
The dereliction of duty is not going to Chuck Schumer, Mitch McConnell, Joe Biden, and by the way, all the Democrats up for re-election this year, like John Tester and Sherrod Brown, and saying, here is our offer, 0 illegal immigrants. Why don't you stand up before the American people and say why the number should be 2 million or 3 million or whatever is authorized in this bill? Have a national debate about the number 0.0. That's the correct number of illegal immigrants.
And by the way, we talk about this here on the MeidasTouch Network. they create this entire fan fiction also of like Trump in office, where they act like there was no border crossings when Trump was in office. Like, the bottom line is there were more border crossings in 2019 pre-COVID than any year when President Obama was in office. And, under this new law, it would give incredible powers to President Biden. People are like, well, why doesn't he just do an executive order? There has to be a law for you to enforce with an executive order. And so that's what this is giving him the power to do. But of course, MAGA Republicans, want to undermine this because they've got their own agenda. And I'll just leave you with this right here. This is Democratic Congress member Dan Goldman talking about how, look, these MAGA Republicans, all they're looking to do is, do these stunts when we're trying to come up with a solution here. Here, play the clip.
I wanted to ask you, because you wrote an op-ed about this, and this really stuck out to me, the hypocrisy here. I mean, they're doing this while simultaneously trying to impeach the Secretary of Homeland Security for saying, in their words, that he's not doing enough about the border. But they're blocking legislation that would help do something about the border. You have an op-ed, but give me your take on that.
Well, the cynicism and hypocrisy is startling. The House Republicans are trying to impeach Secretary Mayorkas for failing to address the problems at the border, while he is negotiating with the Senate legislation that is necessary because executive action is insufficient in this situation. He is negotiating legislation that would address the border. So the House Republicans, rather than engage in those negotiations to try to find bipartisan solutions in divided government, instead are using this sham impeachment that is absolutely baseless, that demeans and debases the impeachment clause of the Constitution, turns it into a pure political weapon, and they're doing that while President Biden and Secretary Mayorkas are trying to solve the problems at the border. They are doing this purely for political reasons and political gain. And what it is showing right now is that Republicans, especially in the House, do not want to solve the problems that the American people care about. They just want power, and they just want to help Donald Trump.
It's such an important point, and you have a unique experience with this, that there is an impeachment clause in the Constitution that they are essentially making fun of by what they're doing. It's absurd what they're doing.
Folks, I know that was a lot of data that I provided. I just think that that's what we need. We need info. We need to just understand the facts, and you may like that deal, you may not like that deal, but this is the stuff that Republicans have been asking for, and now that it's here, they want to play politics with it. So look, share this video with people you know. Just say, hey, watch it. Here are the facts. Here's the data. Think for yourself if this, how you feel about this. But I don't want to spin it in any direction. Suffice to say, here's the facts. I think that it will be beneficial to the border for this to pass. This is the stuff the Republicans have asked for. This is a bipartisan bill, and MAGA wants to kill it. I'm Ben Meiselas. This is the MeidasTouch Network. Hit subscribe. We're on our way to 3 million subscribers. We just passed 3 million subscribers. Hit subscribe. It's free. Have a good one.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Meidas by signing up to the MeidasTouch newsletter at MeidasTouch.com/newsletter.